Welcome everyone to the weekly crypto recap. This is where we go over all of the latest news from the week. We lay it out for you so that you don't have to go through and read it all yourself. There's been a lot happening this week, and I'm really delighted to have two Chris's on the show today who are joining me from very different sides of the world. So thank you so much, Chris Coney. This is your first time on the weekly recap show, and you're tuning in from London.
Well, I always say London time, but I'm not from London.
London time. Whereabouts are you? You're nearby London. You're in England somewhere.
If you have the England, I'm like right in the middle on the East Coast.
I like that you say like nowhere near it, considering that like England fits into a tiny bit of Australia, and if you can drive within if you can drive within like 6 hours in Australia, it's like, yeah, it's real close, just a 6-hour drive, not far at all. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I chatted with you for the first time on Kennedy Finance the other day. It was a great conversation. So if anyone hasn't checked that out, make sure you do, and I might repost it on my channel. But delighted to have you here, and of course we have the wonderful Zaphoid coming back again onto the show all the way from Acapulco. How's it going down there, Zaphoid?
It's pretty exciting. Everybody's thrilled to be here. They have this whole crypto lineup, and everybody's seems to be very excited about crypto. I've been talking with a lot of people, helping a couple of people set up wallets, and just interacting a lot. So we're feeling that maybe everybody's very, very positive about the upcoming year.
That's awesome. There must be a sad atmosphere there as well, given what happened with Acapulco. With the death of one of the founders of that.
For the subset of the people that are aware of that, there's a lot of stress. There have been cancellations. Actually, Judge Andrew Napolitano didn't come down yesterday for a showing. He did a Skype showing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of additional stress among the people who are aware of it, but for the most part, everybody's trying to stay safe and keep a positive mood going despite all the trouble.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because that was just devastating news, and my heart goes out to his family. But so let's go into some of the news for today. We are, of course, streaming this through Bitbacker, as we always do. If you guys wanted to send any questions or comments and you wanted to use a super chat, think twice about that super chat, because Google takes 30% of everything that you send. So instead, go to Bitbacker. I've just posted a link, and you can send it in crypto instead. They currently accept 4 different cryptocurrencies, are in the process of adding a bunch more. So much better for YouTuber engagement, I think. But I am incredibly biased on that front. So just sent that. So if anyone wants to watch it through there, you can actually watch the video through there. If you're just tuned in on YouTube, just go to the Bitbacker page and just watch through there and just test out the site. That would be awesome. So let's start off, guys. As I said, we've got a lot of news to cover. I do want to start off today with some news direct from Caitlin Long. We, of course, know and love her. She's been such a force in this industry. She is, of course, the head of the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition, which has just done tremendous work in really paving the way for what crypto legislation should look like, and really created Wyoming as this great example of what people should be doing around the rest of the country. Now, she has some fresh news that she's just been announcing, and the first one we're going to talk about is SF 0125, this bill which talks about clear direct property rights, which takes into account the idea of rehypothecation, if that's how you pronounce it, and all of these wonderful things. So let's talk about this first one, because this is huge news. Do one of you want to say, start off with this? All right, otherwise I can go on and start it off.
Sure.
Go for it, Chris.
Go for it. Oh, thanks, man. So check it out. So the whole thing about crypto is the bearer asset thing. It's about property rights. We already knew that. That's why we're in it, right? But so far it's been the law of the jungle. Lose your private key, it's gone, right? This is now the law, the actual law, the paper law, catching up with that. That's the first thought that came to my mind when I looked at this. So this is good, an alignment with, I'm going to call it offline law with online law being coders law. So that this is like fantastic news to my ears.
Yes, it's interesting how the banks are keeping up in this. The rehypothecation.
Oh no, Zaphoid,
you're
cutting out. All right, Zaphoid, if you wanted to turn off your video and just have audio, because I think you're cutting out a little bit, and then go ahead. No, he's gone.
He's not
He
receiving.
was like, guys, I hate this. I'm leaving. I'm going to go hang out with the anarchists at Anarchapulco. Way better. All right, so I'll go ahead and introduce it, but jump on in, Zavoid, anytime. As soon as I hear you, as soon as you start coming through, then I'll let you go ahead. But the idea was, I mean, I chatting with Caitlin about this recently. She was saying how a lot of people, when she was reaching out to them to give them information about this bill, a lot of them were already sort of on the side of these institutions who love the idea of being these middlemen between people, you know, between your asset and you. So they like the idea of custodianship, of making, like writing into law the idea that there has to be middlemen, that there has to be some sort of intermediary to handle these assets. And so what this bill is actually doing is saying, like, well, I mean, she reached out to them and she explained it to them and said, hey guys, this is actually institutions who just want a piece of the pie. It's completely unnecessary, especially in the world of crypto, where you can, you know, hold these things yourselves. You know, it doesn't need to be treated like, you know, securities are, for instance, where you need one of these intermediaries to do the purchasing and the holding and all of this. And so she just explained the situation, and all of them were like, absolutely. So I believe this bill was passed. There was just like one dissenting vote out of all of them. So it was just such a momentous occasion. You know, the idea is that a lot of these institutions like to hold other people's assets as well. This idea of rehypothecation, where they can hold someone's assets but then loan it out again, or use that capital as collateral for, you know, their own things, and this double use. And so this actually, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, this actually says that asset is owned by a particular person, and use is limited, like, to that person. No one can go and take your things without you knowing and use them for their own purposes. So that's really interesting stuff that's going on.
Absolutely, yeah. It was. This is definitely law in the United Kingdom and the United States. In the UK, I think we started this whole thing in the House. There was a House of Lords ruling, like in the 1900s, where money on deposit with the banker is the property of the banker, and you're just an unsecured creditor. Now, I was shocked to my core when I found that out, that it's actually law. It has been. No one knows it, which means that speculating with your deposits and all that law is perfectly legal, right? Perfectly legal. But it says right here in this article that in Wyoming, it's a felony to do rehypothecation, according to a Supreme Court case from 1986, Smith versus the state. So this puts Wyoming in direct competition to New York and New York-based fintech companies, because in New York, that's like the most heavily regulated crypto state around, right? Which might bring comfort to some people, but in reality, it just puts layers of institutions and layers of paperwork on top, which doesn't actually help anybody. It just brings back the old financial system on the blockchain, which is not what we're trying to do, you know?
I mean, that's what so many of these institutions do. The whole idea is to make it as opaque as possible, to muddy the waters, so that you feel that you need these experts to come in and, oh, I'll explain it to you. Oh, I'll take care, I'll manage your assets and all of this. And we're in a new era now where it's very easy. The best thing that people can be doing is educating others on how to manage these yourselves. This is not some complicated, ridiculously entrenched, you know, regime that's been built up over decades and decades and decades anymore. This is a new tech that makes it easier than ever to be in control of your own finances and not to need these middlemen. So huge applause to Wyoming, and especially to Caitlin Long, who's just such, I mean, I adore that woman. I adore her. So we're going to get her on the show soon to talk through all these in more detail. But Zapwood, are you back with just audio?
Yeah, just audio. I reached the half a gig limit for my international roaming just
then. No, we used it all up on this show. Oh.
So audio only.
Audio only. Well, we were just talking about rehypothecation. We were just talking about ownership of assets not needing middlemen. Anything to add on that first bill? Otherwise, I'll go on to some of the other bills that were actually just passed, and Caitlin literally just tweeted out news about them.
The last I read about that bill, the only thing I wanted to add was how it indemnifies the banks against a lot of risk related to cryptocurrency. So it's a little bit of positive, a little bit of negative, but overall, I think it's a really good thing.
Okay, so let's move on to some of the other things that have come out. So Caitlin just tweeted out three more blockchain bills were cleared in the Wyoming legislature today. They're heading over to the governor's desk for signature. So these include special purpose depository institution, tokenized corporate stock certificates, and Secretary of State blockchain integration bills. These all passed. And so we've, looked at these briefly. One of them involves FDIC insurance. It's the idea of creating institutions that don't have this insurance, but they're 100% reserve institutions. So the idea that when you have an institution that's FDIC insured because you're using fractional reserve banking, FDIC can bully banks and say, listen, you need to shut down certain accounts because we deem them higher risk than others. And so this is the idea that they're instituting accounts that are crypto specific, I believe. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't rely on any involvement from FDIC. They're 100% reserve. And so they can't be bullied. You can't have arbitrary decisions say, we don't like that account, we're going to shut you down under the guise of, oh, well, they deemed risky. So that's my understanding of this. But again, I'm going to have Caitlin onto the show soon to walk us through exactly what this means. But any thoughts on these latest things that have just been passed, guys?
Sure. So the SPDI, which she calls the Special Purpose Depository Institution. So this creates a state-chartered institution that's a non-lending institution with 100% deposit reserves for businesses that have trouble, getting US dollar denominated bank accounts in the crypto space. So that sounds to me like it's just going to create these very simple institutions that all their one and only job is to be a custodian of the money. They're not the legal owner of the money. They can't do nothing with it other than hold it until the client says so. And you just said there, Naomi, about tokenized corporate stock certificates. That's fantastic as well, which means then you don't have a stockbroker that holds your stock for you. You can tokenize your stock and that's yours. Even if it's in someone else's wallet, it's still yours. It's very, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Zafoy, did you get a chance to look into any of these latest developments?
I didn't see this tweet storm until you brought it up, but it was very interesting. I think the idea of these deposit-only institutions really does bring us back to what everybody thinks a bank really is, a safe place to keep your money. Now, for a lot of people, holding their own keys is fine. I mean, that's what a lot of the technical people want to do. But if, I want my mom or my grandma to safely hold crypto, having an institution like this that can safely hold the keys for her is something that will add an air of legitimacy to the people who need that sort of support. And I think it can only be positive at this point. As much as I say, screw the government, I'm at anarcho-polko, yada, yada, yada.
Freedom!
We don't need the man. But I think in the end, this will be a positive movement for the overall space.
Absolutely. And just so great seeing everything coming out of Wyoming. If you are a crypto business and you're not registered in Wyoming, then I don't know what you're doing, because that's one of the things that was brought up. Where was it recently? You know what? It was actually, I believe, some people who were remarking upon Overstock and what they're doing in the crypto space at the moment. And there are a lot of people on Twitter, for example, wondering why they're registered in New York. So there's still that sort of lingering legacy from people seeing New York as this financial capital of the world and wanting to be connected to all these other financial institutions and all of this. Like, it's still kind of the center for so many things. But I don't think it'll be long before that changes completely, especially when you're dealing with something that lives completely in the ether, where you don't really need physical locations as such. Very much internet-run, decentralized companies starting to spring up all over the place. You're going to see more and more people going to the place where legislation is the best, where they don't need the network effect of proximity that places like New York or Silicon Valley, for example, create. So I think that Wyoming is going to boom, and I just hope that other states follow suit there, because I would hate to see what happened in New York to be replicated in other places. I would much rather see Wyoming set the standard for what would happen in across America, across the world, because I think it's just it's a booming industry and we need to embrace it and watch it flourish as much as possible.
Sure. I mean, that's technically true. Like the New York regulatory restrictions is harsher, and why is overstock base there and so on and so forth. But what occurred to me then is that there's probably politics involved, meaning like if you want other incumbent financial institutions to cooperate with you, and then you go and base yourself in Wyoming, they might snub their nose at you because that's an ideological action. You're basically declaring, you are an anarcho-capitalist by doing that, and that might not gather great favor with the Wall Street types. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, that's just the way people work, they're a bit emotional like that.
Absolutely. Well, we may see like a showdown between more free states, I say, coming to you live from the free state. So like New Hampshire, Wyoming, a lot of these places that, they're going to take on some of these larger states, some of these more prosperous states, some of these more traditionally financially entwined states. So we'll see what happens, what plays out in the next few years.
It very much depends ultimately on what, if you drew a pie chart of all of the retail investors, like how do they slice up ideologically? How many of those people want the bearer assets and the Wyoming ideologically aligned with that? How many people are, just want to abdicate responsibility entirely and want someone else to take care of their cryptos, even if that means losing ownership of it legally? That really is the bottom layer of the pyramid, which will then determine how many of each type of institution serves that bottom layer, if I'm making any sense.
Yeah.
Well, as it is right now, nobody's aware that their deposit in a bank is just an unsecured loan.
Very true.
When it comes to that sort of thing. So people don't realize how much risk they are carrying right now. And while the banks, the financial institutions in New York in particular have profited greatly from the inflationary regime, as that starts to shift, it's going to be really interesting to see how everything shakes out. And places like Wyoming may get a bigger share of the pie moving forward.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. Let's move on to Quadriga. So this has been this fascinating scandal to watch unfold. So anyone who hasn't been keeping up with this, basically is an exchange that lost access to its investors' money, or its customers' money, I should say, because apparently the person in control died and was the only person who had the password that gave them access to all of the cryptos stored there. So this was just like, when this happened, it was just like, wow, that is the worst OPSEC that you've ever heard. That's just terrible. It's almost unconscionable. Like, you can't imagine that scenario ever playing out. And then you had all these conspiracy theories saying like, oh, he happened to die in a place that, has a lot of history with making fake death certificates. And then you're wondering whether this is someone who's run out of the money. And, I hate to be disrespectful like that, because if this is a death, then you have this family that's probably in mourning, and then you have people running around the internet saying he's probably not even dead, he's probably faked it. So like, I hate doing that, but at the same time, I mean, I didn't completely dismiss the thought either. It's what are your thoughts there, just on this initial thing that happened?
That's the problem with the vacuum of information. The mind starts generating all manner of possibilities, right? So this was the CEO who apparently went to India and then died in some God knows what circumstances. And then some death certificate emerged on the internet, which then people were saying that you can buy those in India for like $100. So there's 115,000 users. There's like $190 million worth of assets. $140 million are in crypto assets. About 50 million of it is in actual fiat currency. So that's now it's under court protection right now, so that people can't start grabbing at it. So they've got like a month to get their affairs in order before the predatory law firms start coming in and doing God knows what, class action lawsuits and all the rest of it.
Zaphoid, were you following this one?
A bit, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I have the latest information in it, because this one was changing quite often.
Oh yeah.
But it all seems very shaky. Quadriga was one of the bigger fiat exchanges out there for the Canadian dollar. It was used by a lot of the ATM networks in Canada and such, and it'd been pretty shaky for a while. People would, deposit just fine and then take a week to get their withdrawals. There were
a lot of frozen accounts just prior to all of this happening, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there were a lot of people there who had been waving the flag that they're worried that it was going to be fractional reserve banking hidden behind the board there. So that makes the whole like he faked his death to get away from it thing more attractive to those people.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Safoid.
Well, no, I was talking to an ATM operator here at Anarchapulco from Canada who, once Quadriga closed, they lost a bunch of money and they just said, that's it, we're done. We're closing up shop and doing something else now.
Oh my
because
God.
It's actually really hard in Canada to deal with cryptocurrency in general. The banks very aggressively will close your accounts. I was talking to another ATM operator they closed his account and all of his associated accounts, including his mortgage, when he started getting more money deposited from Quadriga and Coinbase.
Oh my God, that's awful. I mean, one of the things that also led people to be suspicious of all of this is apparently large sums of money were actually moved from the exchange into other exchanges just weeks before all of this happened. So people are wondering, like, why was there such a large transfer of money?
Yeah, it's really hard to say exactly what happened. I don't know if we'll ever really know, but if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, people are probably going to think it's a duck. And there's a lot of shady stuff going on about Quadriga right now.
Oh boy. So we're going to have to watch how this plays out, but there has been recent developments. So one of them, you just got to like slam your face into your palm when you read this. So apparently they lost another $500,000 in Bitcoin by mistake recently. They apparently accidentally moved it into the cold storage that they no longer have access to. And you've got to wonder, like, I mean, this is further just reflecting this terrible, terrible security that they have there. Like, what person in their team was like, we're going to send it to this address because what we want to be doing right now is moving large sums of money now that we've lost so much. So they moved it. Not only did they move large sums of money now, but they didn't even check that that was something they had access to before moving a large sum of money. Like, that just screams, craziness to me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's like such a level of incompetence that you have to suspect foul play. That's how daft it is. Considering the size of this exchange, they were handling hundreds of millions of Canadian dollars worth of crypto, like 190 US, but 250 Canadian. And this was like 500,000 Canadian dollars, 100 Bitcoin was transferred to an address, which turned out to be a cold wallet they couldn't access, which the actual cold wallet in question is actually in a safety deposit box in custody with Ernst & Young. They can't get into it, of course, but they've put it in a safe deposit box so they can figure out how the hell do we get into this thing, which the answer is you can't, but maybe they'll figure that out in due course.
Oh my gosh.
That's just killer. Do you know what this makes me think? There was already a lot of suspicion about crypto exchanges doing fractional reserve. So this doesn't help at all, that because people are going to go, oh, this is even getting closer to proving that the exchanges are behaving with a fractional reserve. And the reason now they do that is because exchange make fees on volume, and if they fake the volume by having phantom assets, then they can turn that over and generate fake fees, and make more money without the money.
And also could have been that when we hit the height in the end of 2017 and there was just so much movement, a lot of places, they did not have the scaling to deal with this sort of influx of user adoption. And so
it reminds you of Mt. Gox version 2.
Oh my God. Let's not even go into Mark Karpellis and all the dodginess there. But it just makes you think, like, maybe they kind of got underwater keeping up with all of this stuff and then said that people had assets, but they hadn't actually acquired these assets. But then we had this bear market, everything just drops, and they never really got that bounce back that helped them catch up. So, it's really, I mean, it's sad to watch that. It's sad to watch institutions that seem to be providing a valuable service just not succeed. But what's even more sad is seeing all these people that have been hurt in the process and what could potentially be really dodgy dealings from the guy in charge. As you said, Zafoid, people who are closing up shop because they've lost their money now.
That's terrible.
It's unrecoverable. So, it's really sad. That's all I could really say.
It's a good point that you don't know the collateral damage like the ATM companies. That's terrible.
Yeah, and as for the fractional reserve part, I mean, these exchanges know that the majority of people will never withdraw their funds. So it has to feel really safe. I mean, I was just looking at, like, according to Coinbase, 98% of customer funds are stored offline.
Wow.
That means people are just putting it there and leaving it there. And
Right.
these exchanges know that, I mean, an order book's on their order book. It's just a database entry in a database somewhere. No funds actually have to even be there behind it. So they just let the orders keep going. And maybe they had a bill at some point where they said, hey, we need to take a little bit of here. And then it was kept going down. It was just easier to keep taking.
Well, this is spooky as hell. This is a hologram from the past. This is exactly what happened when paper money was first created as a certificate of gold deposits with the goldsmith. The goldsmiths were sat around one day going, that pile of gold on deposit for my customers is gathering dust. They could just keep exchanging the paper deposit certificate between themselves. They never withdraw it. So do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start issuing more paper deposits than I've got gold. That's exactly what the exchanges might be doing now, right? Because like you said, mate, like if we know that you only need 2% in the hot wallet, I mean, the other 98% couldn't even be there for all we know.
Do we have any data on what actually happened with the proof of keys on January 3rd? Because that was a big thing that gained a lot of momentum. I believe it was Trace Mayer who started that. And the idea was everyone takes their money out of the exchanges at the same time. And then that increased above the 2% that would usually just keep their money in there so we can actually see whether they have funds. Like, do we have any data on any issues that came up there? How many people moved funds? Was there a surge in moving funds before that happened?
I don't have any hard data, but my analysis of that whole situation was not enough people did it to make a difference. That's basically what I took away from it.
Right. Yeah, that's what I presumed.
Since then, we've had Cryptopia with a hack, and we've had Quadriga with a death, and we've had Light BTC with a fire. And there's probably been a few others that I'm forgetting. So,
and with the Cryptopia thing, like that's dodgy as well. I mean, they say that they're working with New Zealand law enforcement, and that's all. Like, there's no underhanded activity according to the police because they're being very helpful in that investigation. But at the same time, the Cryptopia hackers at one stage returned some of the money to the bank, but then they stole more money. So it's not like they had a change of heart and were like, I feel really bad and I'm going to give some of this back. No, don't feel bad anymore. Taking it from a different one. Like, you've got to
taking
wonder,
the mick, really, right?
Yeah, you've got to wonder, like, did they give it back to someone who, was like their friends that they stole for? Like, I mean, it was just very strange.
I think they're just humiliating them on purpose.
I assumed it was just a change address that the hackers that accidentally sent change to that address.
Oh, yeah?
Okay. There you go.
Wow.
That's what I was guessing when I saw that happen.
Well, there we go. Well, with the Quadriga stuff, so now there is a fight brewing because, as we said, like in the exchanges, you have a mix of fiat holdings. Like Chris, you mentioned the amounts that they're holding there. So you have fiat and you have crypto. And because the fiat obviously is recoverable because it's in financial institutions, and the crypto currently is inaccessible. And so the fiat people are saying, the crypto people are saying, well, let's see what money is in the exchange in general, and let's divide that up across all people who have money in exchange. Meanwhile, the fiat people are saying, nope, my money was in fiat, that's accessible, I should get 100% of what's owed to me. You had your money in crypto, that's your deal. So there is this debate raging right now.
There is. The fiat people are basically saying, look, the unit of account is whatever asset you had. So if you're owed 10 Bitcoin by the exchange, wait till I've got 10 Bitcoin to give it to you. Don't give me any of this. We'll value it at the market value when it happened, and then we'll divide the 50 million pro rata. They're like, don't think so. No, thanks.
Yeah, the last thing the fiat people want is for the exchange to socialize the losses across all the holders.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
So, I mean, the Mt. Gox thing is still ongoing as well. We're still waiting to hear how they're going to divide that up. Again, that was a debate between whether or not they're going to hold it at the pegged price that it was at, which was $400 and then all the rest of, like, this was like at the height of 2017 into 2018 when Bitcoin had just appreciated so much in value. And so people were saying, well, what's going to happen? Like, that's ample money to actually pay everyone back what they already had if you're just giving it like as if Bitcoin is worth $400 a pop. And then there would be all this leftover money. Like, what's going to happen to that? Are we making Mark Karpellis a billionaire here, which was what was being thrown around? And so we actually still don't quite know what's happening there. That's still an ongoing process. I know that people are putting in claims. A lot of my friends are putting in claims for money that they've lost. So we'll do a show that talks directly about that and then update people on all the goings on there.
As a complete aside, did you see who bought Mt. Gox?
Don't tell me. I mean, don't say it. I just, oh my goodness. Yeah, go for it. You can say it.
Brock Pierce, our favorite person ever.
Is that confirmed yet? Because that's actually fascinating. The idea, well, he said that if he buys it, he's going to make everyone solvent. He's just going to be like, hey, here's all your money. I mean,
he's still going to have to wait for the court case to resolve, though.
I thought it was confirmed. I thought it was real. Let me see here. From yesterday, it was like sold for almost nothing. He believes the intangibles of the Mt. Gox estate would allow the relaunch to happen in 90 to 120 days.
Well, there you go. Look, check it out, though. He's not buying the assets. So he can't make people whole unless he has the assets.
Well, I mean, he does. He has his own assets. So I'm just wondering whether it's out of pocket.
Oh, well, that's insane. Like, is he really going to do that out of his own pocket? I mean, what the hell? What on earth? What on earth? Seriously. I mean, like, he's going to give away hundreds of millions of dollars just because he's Brock Pierce. Like,
well, I wouldn't put it past him. It is Brock Pierce. He has done some weird and wonderful things. I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's going to make him like a terrible business and crypto investor in the eyes of his peers, is it not? Like, unless he's an absolute baller and can just give away money like that, which he might be, you know.
Well, he might be.
That would be cool,
knows?
Though.
It would be cool, but again, we'll have to keep an eye on what's going on there. I do want to announce, so I got a super chat from Anthony Monero, who's always wonderful on this channel. He says, ready to go to Mars, referring to Kieran's earlier comment, which I shouldn't read out because it wasn't a super chat or a power chat, Kieran, but I will. He said he's going to register his company on Mars so that Elon Musk will work with him rather than Wyoming. So Anthony Monero is ready to go to Mars. And then he also sent another super chat through and said, what will happen if we had another Mt. Gox? How low BTC could go if a Binance or Coinbase was hacked? That's a great question. Such major players in the space. Also, Anthony, use Bitbacker. Use crypto. We love crypto on this show. Crypto is supreme, but also huge thank you. But it's a great question. You know, there are these central key players who are holding a lot of people's assets because it's very easy for a person to get into the space if they give someone else custody of their assets, if they don't understand security risks, etc. To start off with, which means that there's just tremendous value and a giant target sign on these institutions. So, you know,
I mean, that does lead into another one of the news points we wanted to talk about that critical bug that they found.
Yeah, so we can. Well, I wanted to save that, but let's actually move over to that now.
Could I have a stab at that question?
Absolutely.
So the answer to the question of what happens if we got under the Mt. Gox is, well, like, how far could Bitcoin fall? I think that was the question. Not as far as it did, because the exchange network is way more decentralized now. The reason Mt. Gox was Mt. Gox in terms of its significance was because it was handling like 90+% of all Bitcoin trading volume. It was like the only exchange that anyone could use, and people were wiring money from the United States and Europe and everywhere to Japan, you know, to get it onto the exchange to trade the Bitcoins, right? So that's why it was so huge. It was just like the center, the one and only centralized exchange with most of the volume.
Yeah,
now
that's a great point.
And even if Binance went down, that would hurt a lot, but it wouldn't be as bad as Mt. Gox.
Yeah, I agree. And also on top of that, at the time Mt. Gox went down, so that was what, 2013, 2014? I think it was 2014, right? And what was happening there? I mean, Bitcoin was so new. Like, it was just crazy how new it was. And we'd have like one spike at the end of 2013 and all-time high, and it was going down after that. And then this thing happened, and it shook everyone. They were like, okay, we thought this thing would work. It's only been around a few years. Now we've got this. This is never going to work. But what we've had since then is, you know, hack after hack after hack, after thing failing, after thing failing, after bug. And crypto didn't go anywhere. Crypto is here to stay, and that is something that we've been taught, through this process. And the more things get hacked, the more bugs we find, the more robust the system gets, right? So I think I agree with you there, Chris, that this would not be as severe at all if some of these exchanges now were hacked. It would be a huge blow, but I don't think we would see the same effect on the market, like it really shaking the market as we saw before.
How many people in the space right now would just give up on the whole space if Coinbase was hacked?
I think a lot of people in the space,
anybody in right now would really be bailing.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of them would be like, yeah, never liked Coinbase anyway. Because that seems to be the sentiment, especially amongst people who've been in crypto for a while. And let's use that to lead on to some of these Coinbase points, as you brought up, Zavoid. So let me pull this up here. Let me pull this up. This is what happens when you do things out of order. It's very difficult.
Yes.
Very difficult for me to find them. Okay, there we go. So, so Coinbase, first of all, they just paid a $30K bounty for the discovery of a critical bug. So they have tiers, a great system. I love bounty systems where it incentivizes people to help them with their security. They find bugs, they get rewarded for being white hat hackers in the process. But their tiers are that, I think $50,000 is like for a critical bug, and this was $30,000. So this is a very high ranking tier. Like you have $200, which is low. You have the next tier is the medium tier of $2,000. The next one is $15,000, which is high, and $50,000 is critical. So this seems like it was a pretty big bug that they've been very close-lipped about. They won't talk about it, but they'd say that it has now been patched. But that's, boy, oh boy.
Well, check this though. This is interesting. The trouble is that your bounty programs are always going to pay less than the hacker could get if they just hacked you, right?
But not everyone's an asshole. Some people.
No, I'm just saying. I would just boil it right down to game theory, and the hacker's like, all right, It's lower risk though, because if you hack, you're a criminal.
That's true.
Whereas if you white hack, you can get paid.
You're a hero.
Work, and there's no risk. You just come clean and say, there's the high to critical bug Coinbase, and they dish you out $30,000, and that's just business. I prefer that model.
Yeah, that's really is it's the ease of getting the lack of risk in revealing a white hat bug. Though there have been plenty of cases where white hat hackers have gotten in trouble. But overall, if you're a white hat hacker, you're not going to be in trouble with the law. You just get this money, you pay taxes on it, you move on with your life, you get the social joy of being the hero who discovered this and didn't do anything. So
right. I suppose the white hat hackers that get pinched anyway, this is the incentive to only work on projects that are official bounty programs, right? Because if you just randomly hack into something and they go, there you go, I did that for you, and they turn you in, it's like, oh, thanks a lot. You know what I mean?
Or if it's like not responsibly disclosed to their liking, you get thrown under the bus.
If you go public with it or something stupid like that.
There's a lot of risk associated.
Gotcha.
Anthony Monaco sent another message saying, since Mt. Gox case isn't over, then BTC could go lower then. How many BTC are still missing? That's a great point. So we don't know what's going to happen in the market. So absolutely. But let's so the Coinbase thing, so we've got this bug, but then talking about some people hating Coinbase, like I'm always pretty lenient with Coinbase because I always say that that's a great onboarding platform for beginners.
Yeah, sure.
And I get a lot of flack for saying that, but it's true. It's like 100% true. If you're getting into crypto, it's very simple. They're going to store it for you. You don't have to worry about security. It gives you time to learn the ropes, etc. But then you have things like this. So Coinbase Wallet to feature private key backup on Google Drive iCloud. Now, I've talked about security in the past where I've made fun of people where they said, oh, Naomi, I set up my first Bitcoin wallet, like you said. And I'm like, great. Did you write down on a piece of paper your private key, twice and put in different? And they're like, yes, I saved it in my Google Drive. And you're like, what are you doing? You're an idiot. Don't do that. That's terrible security. And here you have an institution like Coinbase saying that that's going to be the default option for people. It's going to give them the option to say, hey, do you want to back up your private keys so you can still access your account? That seems crazy. Like, am I missing something here?
No, I don't think so.
No.
What it's going to do to the users is it's going to is going to calibrate their mindset in a really dangerous way, because then the users are going to treat this digital money just like any other worthless digital asset that you might just casually save to your Google Drive. It's not going to treat people, or it's not going to train people to see this stuff as actually valuable.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, it further ingrains the idea that I mean, if they're encouraging people to go to Google Drive, like every person in crypto is probably just like, this is ridiculous. This is terribly insecure. Don't do this. And so it's going to make you wonder, okay, so what's actually going on here? I mean, you think, like, obviously the government has access to everything in your Google Drive. That just goes without saying. The NSA has access to everything there. So has Coinbase just come out and said, hey, by default, we're giving the government access to all of your crypto? Is that what's just happened here?
Well, theoretically, it is encrypted using your password.
It is encrypted with quite a modern algorithm by the looks of things.
Yes, but the good money's on the fact on people doing this not having a pretty strong password.
Good call. Very good call. Yep. And also it says here that, you know, technically it's only accessible by the Coinbase mobile wallet, but needs the password. And like you say, mate, like, yeah, people are just going to use memorable passwords. When I say memorable, I mean easy.
Naomi, Brockwell rules 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Exactly.
That's definitely not my password, guys. So yeah, Anthony Monaco just sent through another super chat. Anthony, you got to send Bitbacker power chats. I love you, but also use Bitbacker. We got to support the ecosystem that we love. So he says saving your private key on a cloud is like taking a picture and saving. It's totally correct. You know, it just seems crazy. You guys are talking about it being encrypted, but if you have a really easy password, which, let's face it, most people do, if they don't know much about security, which most people don't, you know, it just seems like, it just screams security loophole to me.
Don't it? It's like Fort Knox with one of those old, you know, those old long keys with just 2 forks that you could pick really easily. It's like massive security, and then you just pick the lock and come right through the front. Exactly. Just get a hair clip or something right through the front door. That's kind of what it's like.
Or it's like how the old nuclear launch numbers were all zeros for however many years.
Oh,
were they really?
Oh, God, that's terrible.
Oh my God.
Well, at least with that, you'd have to be in the actual control room, whereas this, you just need to be connected to the internet.
Yeah. Well, the final Coinbase news that I wanted to just mention, we don't need to go into, but Coinbase has said that users can now withdraw Bitcoin Cash Fork BSV. So that's interesting if anyone cares about BSV. I know I did a live stream yesterday Zapoy just sent me a link for the code. I'll put that in there. That's ridiculous. I'm posting that in the chat for you all so that you can
just to prove I wasn't just pulling it out of my butt.
Absolutely. So that was not pulled out of Zapoy's butt. Yeah. So yeah, I did a live stream yesterday to celebrate Valentine's Day with Kevin Pham. We did a Valentine's Day special where we talked about the love of his life, which is BSV, and we talked about Craig Wright. We talked about his switch, because that kind of came as a shock, and I think a lot of people were like, what's going on there? He kind of went from Bitcoin maximalist to BSV supporter, you know, made his account private, everything. So we chatted about that yesterday. So maybe there are some people on this chat who are interested in that. I thought it was a really interesting conversation with him, just kind of figure out why he switched. I disagree with him, but I enjoyed the conversation. But so now Coinbase, I like the fact that they're allowing people to withdraw their money. This is something that they have done with, like, for example, Ethereum Classic. When that happened, they did Bitcoin Cash when that forked. They initially weren't planning on supporting it at all, but eventually ended, you know, allowed trading on the platform. Now BSV, they're not allowed trading at all at this moment. That may change in the future, we don't know, but they are allowing people to withdraw there. So let's move on from there. Did you guys check out the launch code? 20 years? It was that code for 20 years? Oh,
yep.
Guys, these are the people in government who are, you know, these are the ones who are smarter than you, making all the decisions for you, protecting you from yourself. We're in good hands. All right, Anthony sent another one and said, I tried your stuff, but it doesn't work. It absolutely works, Anthony. If you need help, you let me know. You've used it in the past. So you just direct message me and I will walk you through the process. It's super easy. Works on most browsers. I encourage you there's some browsers are better than others, but I can walk you through that. But definitely works. Give it another go. So let's move on from nuclear codes and Bitcoin SV. I want to mention Lightning Torch. So lots going on in the news about that. So this torch is being metaphorically passed from one person to another, or I should say the metaphorical torch was being actually passed. And people testing out the Lightning Network and kind of, it was a great publicity stunt. I thought it was kind of cool. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so just to get everyone to speed, so the Lightning Network is state channels. So you lock a certain amount of Bitcoin up in the channel, and then you send it like an abacus is the way I describe it. You send the beads from one end to the other, and the other person at the other end then owns the money. They send it back or send it on to someone else. So the torch was where once you got the money, you added a bit of money to it and then passed it on to someone else that you trusted on Twitter, which is cool because it's kind of like got the attention of a few people in the crypto space. Ironically, ended up at Elizabeth Stark's wallet, who is the founder of Lightning Labs. Not really she knows about Lightning, so don't really need to send it to her. But
here, Elizabeth, try out this new cool thing I discovered called Lightning.
You know what I mean?
You may want to get involved.
What occurred to me about Elizabeth Stark's name today is she's the CEO of Lightning Labs, which was like Tony Stark from Iron Man, super techie CEO. So that was it's a loose link, but it's one thing that occurred to my wild mind earlier on.
So Jack Dorsey, let's talk about him for a little bit. So he posted some things about Lightning, and everyone kind of went crazy about it. Like, yeah, Lightning is the future because the CEO of Twitter, which we all love, is talking about it. So Jack Dorsey is a major investor in Lightning Labs. Is that correct?
That is my understanding.
I didn't know that. I think I didn't know that.
So there were some people who were saying like, oh, well, Jack Dorsey was co-opting people, and he was co-opted and he's just being used to support this agenda, which is Lightning. Who got to him, blah, blah, blah. And then there are people who are like, there were people who were like, well, actually, he's doing the greatest publicity stunt of all time. He invested in this thing, and now he's using one of the most popular social media platforms in the world to promote this thing. It seems like a great power move by him. Whether you like Lightning or not, I really hope Lightning succeeds. I do have a lot of hesitant moments with it, especially at the moment, but I definitely hope it succeeds. So to watch this kind of thing evolve and these different people using it, I think it's pretty exciting.
It is pretty exciting. Check it out. 7 million users of the Cash app that he founded. So the reason why this kind of stuff's exciting is not just because Jack Dorsey is a celebrity, but because he's the CEO of the Square and the Cash app technologies. So if they choose to become a Lightning node, you're talking about switching on 7 million additional users into the crypto space, just like that.
But to be honest, I don't think that is ever going to happen. I don't think
it's going to happen?
No, I don't think Twitter is ever going to integrate with this.
No, not Twitter, the Cash app.
Oh, Cash app. That's interesting as well. So Jack kind of has this two sides to him, right? And I remember at Consensus where nothing was allowed to be mentioned about Twitter during his interaction. Like when I introduced him to the stage, you couldn't mention it. No questions were allowed to be about Twitter. So he definitely has these two sides which are conflicting. Twitter, right off the bat, banned any sort of crypto advertising. It's been very severe against crypto accounts. So it's clearly not a very crypto-friendly site. And then meanwhile, Jack has this other side of him, which clearly is very interested in crypto, has invested money in Lightning Labs, is promoting Lightning Network and all of this. So it is interesting to see what will happen there with Lightning. If that does happen, then I think if that would make instant success for Lightning Network if that becomes a porthole for people to be using this new system.
They can make fees out of it as well. Like with 7 million users, they can take routing fees on the Lightning Network with their 7 million users.
Yeah.
They will become the indispensable Lightning node that everybody will have to route transactions through.
They will.
Hopefully
And once
not.
you create one of those centralized focal points, it becomes very easy for government to leverage that and control it. So I'm always wary of things like that. That's one of my concerns with Lightning. And I do want to discuss Lightning in another episode. I actually have an interview with the CEO of Bitrefill explaining Lightning coming out next week that I shot at Satoshi Roundtable. And very interesting how it all works. As I said, I really hope that it all pans out. But one of my main concerns at the moment is, talking about how difficult it is for people to open up channels. And when you're talking about like saving merchants money in fees by them setting up these channels and all of these, or using other channels, and it just becomes a very complicated process, and people aren't used to staking money in order to receive money. That's not part of a merchant's business model that they're used to. So it does become very difficult to adopt. But then the idea was brought up that you'll probably have like these institutions, these third parties who become that hub. So you don't have to set anything up, you can just use their channels, etc. But when you have things like that, don't those places become money transmitters? Aren't they then required to get money transmitters licenses? Isn't that what adds 5% fees to using all of these services like PayPal and Stripe? And it's the fact that they have to cover all of the fees associated with being a payment provider. So once
you said people are not used to staking money to spend money. Well, we are, because a debit card by nature requires you to fund it, right? Same thing.
No, you're not funding it if it's just sitting in your bank account. Every time I make a purchase, I'm not like, that's my storage system. I think there's tremendous risk with just storing your crypto in a channel. That's not something that people are going to be doing, and it's, especially if you have to stake that money and don't have access to it. The difference between that and a debit card is you can get your money out of your account anytime you want to. Whereas if you've staked money in a channel and you can no longer use that channel, I mean, it's a different situation there, I think.
You can get out. You just settle it to the main blockchain, right? It takes 10 minutes.
You really think that, I mean, if I put my money in an account, I can decide on the interest rate that I'm getting. I can set certain things that justify me keeping my money there. Otherwise, it's better off that I just spend it, given that I lose 2% of it a year. Now, with Lightning, so first of all, there does seem to be risk with storing it in a channel that people have pointed out, and hopefully that will get better. But there does also seem to be this trade-off. Like if you're putting your money, if you're holding it there and you're not getting interest on it or anything, you have to be able to charge high fees to justify you putting your money there, right? And so then
because we don't demand high fees for sticking it in our Bitcoin wallets, right? So it's just another Bitcoin wallet as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I think that paradigm's going to change, though. I mean, as long as Bitcoin's always going up in price, I think that's going to be great. But if it ever stabilizes, then you've got a situation where you need to be earning money off your capital. You're probably going to be investing it in businesses. You're probably going to be putting it in deposit. You're probably going to be using some of the institutions at the moment where you can actually get money back. Like there are lots of crypto lending institutions now where you can get returns, or you can use that as collateral for fiat, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, listen, I agree with you for the most part. A lot of these concerns are overblown at the moment, and I definitely need to, I want to have an in-depth discussion with people about all of these, because some of it may just be FUD that's thrown around. At the moment, I'm not 100% waving the pom-pom saying this is the future, but I am hopeful. As with most things in crypto, I'm hopeful that it'll work out.
I'm not waving the pom-poms either. I'm just saying it's got a specific use case, which is for smaller payments. So it's the equivalent of having a pocket wallet with some cash in it. So that's why you don't need like uber security on your Lightning channel, because you shouldn't have that much money in there anyway. I mean, one of these stories about Fold allowing people to buy Domino's pizza with it, they were saying the average purchase was $25. That's a big Lightning transaction. Usually they're less than $5. So Lightning was designed for like streaming money. So like you pay for a video by the second type of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to discuss there, so maybe I'll invite you back on as well.
Sure,
we talk about that. We are running out of time, but I do want to mention so that one of the apps I actually got demoed a couple of weeks ago was a Lightning app that allows you to buy pizza Bitcoin. So that was kind of cool watching that. Interesting seeing these new things. I love that they started off with pizza. Like that has a strong place in
right?
crypto's history. So Anthony Monejo sent a super chat, not a power chat in Bitbacker, but a super chat. But it's all right because he says he's at dinner watching this from a restaurant. I really appreciate that, Anthony.
That's nice.
Maybe send me some leftovers because I'm pretty starving. Anthony then says Lightning seems to be kind of centralized, at least for the moment. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things in the space, like we'll have to wait to see how they play out. It could go in either direction. As I said, I'm hopeful. So let's just see what happens with Lightning. If it succeeds, I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, we talked about Jack Dorsey's Square app. That's all super interesting. Now let's look at JPMorgan, just as we're kind of starting to wrap up here, but this is something I did not want to skip. JPMorgan has its own crypto and it's starting real world trials. So people were up in arms about this. When JPMorgan announced, like, we have our own cryptocurrency, first of all, it comes hot off the heels of Jamie Dimon saying Bitcoin is a fraud. And then his company says, oh, by the way, we're also involved with it. So
he apologized for that. What more do you want?
Absolutely. He apologized for that, the giant market downturn that it led to. So there's that issue. But the other issue is that we're sort of confusing, like, the way we define cryptocurrency, right? I mean, it's probably fine for him to define it that way, but it really is far removed from the Bitcoin that we know and love and understand, because I think it's a misuse of the word cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrencies for me, and again, maybe the definitions are not so set in stone yet. It's early days, we'll have to figure it out. But for me, to conflate closed systems and private blockchains with open systems, like for the individual who's not acquainted with the space, for the noob who doesn't quite understand what all of this is, and to hear someone saying, oh, well, we've got this Bitcoin-like thing, but it's in a closed system, which means it's free from all of this risk and it's completely legal and regulated, use ours instead. For me, that's not a good thing at all, because that is huge amount of damage that then needs to be undone with people's understanding of what cryptocurrency is. Like for me, cryptocurrency is this decentralized thing that can't be leveraged to, you can't put pressure on a focal point and shut it down. There are so many advantages to having this decentralized open system, and then to have companies like JPMorgan come along and say, well, we have a cryptocurrency too. It's just like all these other things. Like, no, they just kind of have like a PayPal-esque digital money, which is what they've had all along, right? They've kept their monies in ones and zeros for forever. For me, this is really no different. It's just a more expensive accounting system. So, or a more inefficient accounting system. Like, what are your thoughts on all of this, this announcement from JPMorgan?
Sure. So, the terms cryptocurrency and blockchain are not well defined. Andreas does a pretty good job of this. So you have to add words in front of it to get the specificity. So Andreas is big on open public blockchains, and that is a whole different thing altogether to, say, closed permissionless. That's when he does the thing about, oh, we want the blockchain without the Bitcoin bit. Can we have it without the openness, without the borderlessness, without the permissionlessness? And you take all that out, and then you've got nothing left, really.
Yeah, right.
So this is basically an internal stable coin. This is the way I understand it. So JPMorgan settling $6 trillion of currency daily wholesale, which is in between its own institutional partners and so on. And they have the same settlement problem of taking like 3 days to settle. So why are they doing this? There is a technical reason why they're doing this. It's quicker, right? You might think, well, blockchains are slow. They're still a damn sight quicker than the traditional settlement system in the banks. So they're looking to speed up their wholesale transactions between clients. So that's the fact. Now, I also think that from my crypto anarchist side goes, yeah, they're also putting this out into the media just so they can be seen to be doing blockchain, right? They're using Ethereum-based technology, this Quorum thing, which is based on Ethereum technology that they've modified for their own uses. So that's a good thing that Ethereum technology is being adopted. But I think it's going to potentially confuse other people in their industry who don't have the ability to nuance what they're doing with this private permissioned mini Ethereum and everything else out there, because you do need to do a lot of study to see the differences. And that's not necessarily their fault. It's just the way of complexity.
This is going to be a use case for lots of large banks. Who I think this affects most is actually Ripple, because this is essentially in direct competition with what Ripple trying to do.
Good call. Good point, Nat. Good point.
This really does negatively affect their market share, because if it's really easy for an organization to just do them themselves, why Ripple at all?
Sure, that's a very good point. This is the biggest risk of an innovative startup. I'm going to throw a new metaphor out there, which I've said before, which is like the startup is almost like this little motorbike on the freeway, you know, trying to get to its destination, and the incumbent is like one of those big articulated lorry 18-wheeler things. And they're in their own lanes, right? And the new startup is like XRP wanting to do these validator-based decentralized ledgers for super fast settlement and so on. And then you've got like JPMorgan, who's the truck. And as long as they ignore the use case, XRP is fine. But all the truck needs to do is change lanes, and it wipes out the little moped. And that's the equivalent of what you just said, mate, Chris, where if JPMorgan decide to basically just look at Ripple and go, oh, that's interesting, we'll adopt the same, we'll build a similar product, because they've got the existing positioning, they just wipe out the startup in one foul swoop, you know?
Yep. That's
good call.
Did you guys lose me for a while?
Yeah, we just had to vamp for a second, it's fine.
Did you like do some sort of singing without me? I don't know.
No, I just carried on talking, and just like nothing happened. I thought you'll be back in a sec.
Completely died. I'm actually on my phone now because I have no internet anymore. The trials and tribulations of my life at the moment, which
We're under attack. The show's under attack.
It is. It is. No, I've had a run of very bad luck. So I'll do a video. A lot of people have been asking me, like, Naomi, what's going on? Like, you haven't been putting out videos and all this stuff. I will explain that. It's been pretty insane. But for the meantime, I'm going to put this on, and then let's keep going. So you guys, you were talking about JPMorgan. Were we still on that?
Yes. We were saying how the biggest victim here is Ripple, or the biggest loser here is Ripple. Because
right.
This is directly attacking Ripple's use case. So
yeah, and you actually saw a big downturn in their price as well. All of this was announced, so it does seem like there's not much of a use case for this thing that they were trying to be the intermediary of all the banks at JPMorgan.
Take a hit. Yeah, it looks like they did take a bit of a hit.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't the only person to think that. Okay. But yeah, I'm not going to shed any tears over Ripple. But the other side of this is, to me, this almost looks like another, blockchain iced tea kind of thing, where they are just saying this to gain attention as well. I mean, there's multiple layers, of course, but it doesn't really affect us, because it all is just behind the scenes for them. They're using this technology that we all use, and it's cool. So we should buy more JPMorgan stuff.
Oh God, more products from Chase, as if the ones we had already weren't bad enough. Yeah. So
but if they don't do this, like the Circle dollar and other stable coins like that are going to start getting adopted, and they can't afford to just sit and let that happen. They just can't do it.
Exactly.
Right. So my I don't have access to my chat at this current moment, just in case you're wondering. If anything pops up, I know all of the hundreds of people who are currently sending me Bitbacker chats. I'll read them in a moment. I know they're piling up there. Just all sending them right now. I know. So just hang tight. I'll get to them in a second. Let's keep going. I know, Chris, it's super late where you are from England, so I don't want to hold you up too much, but let's just quickly run through some of the other things in the news that we wanted to cover. So, JPMorgan, get out of there. Venezuela, they impose capital controls on Bitcoin remittance amid record volume. So this is just, oh my God, they can't catch a break there. You've had Venezuelan government, like when you had Bitcoin kind of coming around as a lifeline to a lot of these people, and saying like, I lost my train of thought because my internet just came back on. Whoa, I can see the chat. You had Bitcoin being a lifeline, and then you had the government cracking down on miners there, because they have price controls on electricity there, so it's super cheap for people to mine. So it was basically like having a printing press in their basement. But then the government cracked down and was looking for high electricity usage areas, throwing people in jail, like unspeakable things probably happening to these people. But at the very least, they're being arrested. And then, Bitcoin was still being this lifeline, but the government's really just trying to snuff this out. And so now they've got capital controls on Bitcoin remittance because a lot of people are using Bitcoin there now. So it's just devastating what's happening.
So check this out. The fee that the government is levying is 15% on Bitcoin remittances. And the fees range anywhere from a minimum of 28 cents up to 15% of the transaction. And even then, the upper limit for a cryptocurrency payment is $3,000. So given that the fee imposed is 15%, then you move on to say, it says here, the World Bank says the global average for remittance fees ranges between 5.2% and 9.2%, basically making cryptocurrency remittances more expensive than fiat remittances. That's how ridiculous it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So they do not want this to happen. And then in contrast, you look at Argentina. So this is a place that was the victim of rampant hyperinflation not too long ago, but now they're embracing cryptocurrency, like tale of two very different cities right now. They're accepting Bitcoin on public transport there at the moment, which is really exciting.
Half exciting, because they're going to be selling the Bitcoin. So when I first read this story, I was like, yippee, you can go to the machine and it accepts Bitcoin as payment. But like a lot of merchants are doing these days, they're allowing people to spend it with them, but then they're liquidating it into a stable currency like fiat. So it's progress. We have to pass through this phase. We have to travel through this area, but it's an interim to them. Then once we get liquidity up and price stability in crypto, the final stage will kick in, which is when they'll actually take the Bitcoin and keep hold of it. And then we've arrived.
Yes, that's what we need to develop in cryptocurrency is the full ecosystem. So the merchants who are receiving cryptocurrency then have a place to actually spend it when they're buying their own supplies, paying their employees, whatever. And
sorry, mate.
So this is usage. This is potential adoption. I haven't looked into all the details in the Argentina thing, but this is a necessary step.
Sure. And check this out for some breaking news. 3 hours ago, Argentina settles an export deal with Paraguay using Bitcoin.
Wow.
So the other interesting part about the Venezuela Bitcoin thing is I was talking to some Venezuelans here, and they're relatively certain that the government themselves are purchasing Bitcoin because, again, they're the ones producing money. So just like everything else, they have the first mover advantage when inflation happens. So they can buy Bitcoin at a cheaper rate than it will sell in a day when that currency hits circulation.
That's interesting.
Right. No, that is a great point. And also your point, Chris, that you brought up about different countries settling in Bitcoin is really interesting. I mean, you saw Marshall Islands about 6 months ago, I think now, saying we're going to implement our own cryptocurrency. And then like the World Bank coming at them and saying like, no, do not do this. Like, we're not threatening you, but we're kind of threatening you, saying if you do this, there could be unintended consequences in your dealings with America. They might not trade with you. They might cut you out. All these, underhanded, implicit threats there, or pretty much explicit threats. And so you're looking at a situation now where Bitcoin, like settling in Bitcoin and settling in cryptocurrency, as even JPMorgan has realized, is just a lot easier and quicker and cheaper to do it in cryptocurrency, and not having to go through the US dollar and not having to go through the US settlement layers, which are just complex and archaic and corrupt as well. So, I mean, what's going to happen to the US stronghold as world currency if people just start flocking to cryptocurrency? You've had, Iran talking about this. You've had Germany saying that they don't want the US dollar to be the reserve currency anymore. You have Paraguay and Argentina literally making transactions in Bitcoin now. So, I mean, what do we see in America's future if this is happening? Because one of the main ways that America stays on top is forcing everyone to use the US dollar, so if that's no longer necessary, and if suddenly it's not the reserve currency for oil, it's not people's default money, what's going to happen to the US economy? Like, should we be gearing up for a giant depression? Because Krugman the other day even said that. He said, we're going to have a major depression this year. It is going to be way worse than what we have seen in the 08 crash, and we don't have a solution to it. And while I never actually listen to anything Krugman says, for the first time, I may agree with him. I may not agree on the time scale that he's talking about, but I do see just an impending collapse happening.
I hadn't read that Krugman said that. That is very interesting. Usually he mocks people who says anything like that.
Well, I mean, so take that with a grain of salt. I think I was like scanning and then I remembered it. So I just kind of pulled that out. But I do believe he did say that. Let me just check while you guys discuss, because I know that Chris, there was an article you wanted to discuss talking about this impending collapse.
Yeah, so you was just asking the question, what's going to happen to the US dollar? Well, it will return to being a national currency of the United States rather than a world currency. So this deal that Argentina and Paraguay just did, Paraguay bought some pesticides from Argentina. It was a $7,000 trade, and they paid them in BTC. So all that was required there was for a crypto exchange to exist in both countries. So then the client businesses can take some of their own national currency, Argentine pesos, and I'm not sure what the Paraguay currency is called, but they then,
Paraguayan
the Paraguayan
coins.
dollar. They bought some big $7,000 worth of Bitcoin, they could have even sent it to the Argentines' crypto exchange wallet directly, and then they could have just immediately sold it into Argentine pesos, right? And then shipped the goods. I mean, it's as easy as that. So in terms of commodity trading, I don't see any reason why you couldn't start doing this with BTC, and have that as the thing that commodities trades against. That would be epic.
So I was correct with Krugman. So although every link I click takes me to some weird thing. No, he said, okay. So he says, he was on Bloomberg, I believe. He says the US is widely unprepared for imminent recession. He says it's going to be far worse than the last one. He says, I wouldn't be as definitive, but it seems pretty likely. There seems to be an accumulation of smaller problems, and then the underlying backdrop is that we have no good policy response. The Fed can't cut rates very much. There is, in fact, fiscal space if we were prepared to use it, but it's hard to see that this current leadership is going to respond in any kind of nimble way. So yeah, I think there's better than ever odds that we do have a recession. Like, I mean, there's so much to take in with that. Like, clearly, I mean, Krugman is an idiot anyway. So when he's talking about, oh, well, cutting rates, that would be the savior of all of this. No, it's the cutting rates that is causing all of this to happen. So, when he say, like, we're not going to see any policy, therefore, like, it's the policy of the current Federal Reserve that is going to cause this. I mean, that's clearly not. This is impending. This was started long ago by very bad government decisions that have just been stockpiled. And if you go back to my interview with Robert Murphy I did a few months ago, where he talks about like inversion of yield curves, he talks about how he thinks that he doesn't have a time scale for when this is going to happen either, but he said that it's just going to be so devastating and so much more devastating than the 08 crash, because interest rates have just been held so long for so long. So, I mean, it is a little bit scary, right?
They've been playing musical chairs as long as they can, trying to kick this can down the road as far as they can. And at some point, we will have to pay the price. If you wanted me to get all tinfoil hatty, part of me...
Oh, do it. Get the tinfoil hat out.
I fully expect this is right on schedule for the simple reason that they want the economy to be bad before Trump's reelection, so the Democrat gets in and is able to institute all of their dream correct fixes to this. So the Green New Deal will be the least of our worries in that case.
Oh boy, but why would people want the Democrats in? Like, the Wall Street doesn't care who's in. They just care whoever gives them the most money. Did Trump not pay them enough?
Entirely possibly. But again, the Republicans, okay, both of them suck in my perspective. That being said, the Democratic Party is more inclined to inflate more than the Republicans, simply because...
I used to believe that, Boyd, but I just don't believe that at all anymore.
Look at the Green New Deal. Will the Green New Deal pass if Trump is president? No.
Unlikely.
Will the Green New Deal pass if, I mean, God only knows of the 18 Democrat candidates that are going for it now. will it pass if they're president? Especially if we just had a huge recession, everything we've done, cutting taxes to businesses, spending on this stuff has all been wrong. This Green New Deal will fix everything that's wrong with our society. That is how they will sell it.
Oh boy. All right. Well, let's just agree that politics is dumb and just be thankful that now we have an alternative outside of the US dollar that we can go to when everything imminently collapses.
And I will say that, yes, I agree with you completely. Every single Republican president has raised the deficit and spent at least as much as the Democrat president. So I'm not in disagreement with you there at all. I just am looking strategically at this one move that it seems they're trying to do.
Right.
And what's an interesting perfect storm here is that what if the economy turns south and another crisis emerged, the safety net that is the government that caught us last time isn't going to be there. They're pretty powerless this time around for a number of reasons. Like they've almost only got two tools, like inflation of the currency supply and the interest rate, which is already rock bottom anyway. So they're going to be largely ineffectual to catch any market knives that fall, which means it's going to have to correct itself properly. Now, what we haven't had before is a cryptocurrency ecosystem. We don't know what happens. Is that going to absorb the value? We'll wait and see, won't we?
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen now that we have an alternative. So we're gonna have to see how much this is able to cushion the blow, right? Yeah. Anthony Monaco just says the big crisis will be the detonator to flip the world to cryptos. They are only controlling the top of the iceberg. With cryptos they own, they will control most of it except privacy coins and BTC. So yeah, I mean, definitely, I think that BTC, different privacy coins, there are definitely things out there that could mitigate some of the loss that I think is going to happen. Like if you talked on the show yesterday, Chris, about diversifying your portfolio, even if you think a crash is imminent. I think that's great advice. Like, you can put everything into crypto. I mean, it really is taking a big gamble, right? But if you believe that the US government is going to explode and that's your best bet, go for it. One other strategy is to diversify and make sure you've got a little chunk in all kinds of different types of assets, different asset classes, whether it's like property, whether it's gold, other precious metals, fiat as well, maybe not necessarily US dollar. Maybe there are other currencies around the world that might be robust enough to what's the word I'm looking for, to deal with a collapse of US dollars. But it's hard to know how to advise people in a situation like this, right?
Well, check this out. The thing about having a diversified portfolio is you have to accept the fact that with a diversified portfolio, some of your assets are going to go down in value. So trying to avoid that fact is foolish. That's going to cost you to lose more money, right? The point about having a diversified portfolio is that you're spread across all asset classes. And then no matter which way the economy moves, one portion of your portfolio is going to be going down, right? Mm-hmm. You got to accept that fact. But the reason you diversify is that when one of you is going down, if gold's going down, the purchasing power of your currency is going up and vice versa, right? And it's similar with the next crisis, which is likely to be an asset bubble bursting. You're going to need some cash, right, to buy those cheap assets. So, if you've committed all of your funds to crypto like I did, which is why I sold some, because I just didn't have any cash on this. That was just bad principle. Principle. I actually consciously crystallized some losses on principle because I didn't have enough cash in my rounded portfolio for any eventuality of a further decline.
Yeah.
You're right. We've never tested the crypto market in an actual global financial collapse before. We have no idea how it'll behave. The closest thing we can do is look and see how other assets like gold and silver have behaved in previous crashes like this.
Sure.
And what we see then is gold and silver, they go down before everything else. I mean, just look at 2008 when gold dropped to, what was it, $600 at its lowest before everything really went tits up.
Right.
And the reason for that, from my perspective, from talking with people, is that they are simply more liquid assets that are used to cover failing bets on the over-leveraged
That's smart, mate. That's very smart.
Yeah, if your portfolio is declining, then you need some cash somewhere, and so you're probably going to sell some of the assets like precious metals. In order to do that, a bunch of people selling their precious metals.
You hit the nail right on the head there. Let me just press that point and praise him for that. It was superb. when volatility returns to traditional assets, you're going to run to the liquid assets first, no doubt about it. And that's probably why gold's going to take a little bit of spanking at that point, because it's so liquid.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Some not financial advice, because we don't give financial advice on the show, but you can definitely learn from these wonderful gentlemen here. We have run out of time. We still had so much to cover. So I don't know. I'm just going to run through some headlines right now. So, judge hits crypto startup with injunction in reversal of past court order. So one of the things we mentioned on the show previously was that the SEC got a bit of a losing decision from a judge who said that, something was not a security. Now the judge has just reversed that, but it turns out there are these other mitigating factors. The company is it's Blockvest, and its founder Reginald Buddy Ringgold. So we don't know how much of this newly discovered evidence is just helping the SEC save face. That we are no strangers to character assassination in this industry, but at the same time, does seem to be some mitigating evidence there. So we'll see what happens there. So that was a win for the SEC there. Then you have SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce, who's confirming that guidance on crypto tokens is coming, but they've been confirming that for years now, and no guidance has come. So I'm not going to hold my breath there, although I am a fan of Hester. She's been very positive towards cryptocurrency in the past, unlike other SEC people like Jay Clayton, who's been a bit of an asshole.
She's the good cop.
She's the good cop, yeah. So then we've got New York Stock Exchange. ARCA is filing. It kicks off the countdown for new Bitcoin ETF. So basically, the SEC has 240 days to make a final decision on whether to approve or deny the ETF. Again, another ETF thing. It's like there's so many of these things going on. We haven't really seen market movements according to it. People are stopping caring. I'm going to go ahead and tell you about it anyway. We've got an ETF tied to Bitcoin futures withdrawn after SEC staff request. This is one from Reality Shares ETF Trust, which is a division of Blockforce Capital. They withdrew their exchange-traded fund proposal that would have included exposure to Bitcoin futures. They withdrew that with a note saying that it's not appropriate to file a registered 40 Act fund with cryptocurrency exposure at this time. So clearly the SEC is just not comfortable with cryptocurrency. That's very clear from watching Jay Clayton's remarks. We'll see what happens there. But then we've got New York Stock Exchange parent ICE participates in over $20 million, anticipates over $20 million spent on BACT this year. BACT is something that we've been following, wondering what's going to happen. Obviously, BACT and New York Stock Exchange are intertwined there, so we thought that this was going to be the one to be successful. Then you had the government shut down. This got kicked down the road as well. So we'll have to see what happens there. Again, no clarity on the horizon yet. And then this final, to round things out, this remark from the SEC Commissioner who says Bitcoin ETF will be approved eventually. Thank you, SEC. That was very informative. And
you mean before the sun burns out, you mean?
Maybe. They didn't specify that, so I can't be sure. But so there's all this stuff happening. Really, the moral of the story is the Bitcoin scene and cryptocurrency world is moving at lightning speed. Government is dragging their feet and not making decisions about anything, and that's the way it's always going to be. And that's the way we like it. So there you go. Anthony Monaco. Yeah, oh yeah, sorry, mind the pun. Anthony Monaco sends a super chat. Thank you, Anthony, so much. I really appreciate these. It's so wonderful to have your support. He says, by creating their own coin, they will charge everything, close or block your account soon, and cash will be forbidden. That is a real threat. Right? Yeah, getting everything digitized, banning cash. I mean, these are definitely things that different governments around the world are already playing with. We should not be surprised if there's a world soon where cash is illegal, everything is digital so that it can be tracked. So if there's ever a time to get your money out of something that can be controlled by someone else, now may be the time for that, regardless of where you think the markets are going to go. So on that rapid fire ending to this, to get all those out of the way, thank you both so much for being on here. I really appreciate it. Zaphor, you tuning in all the way from Anacapulco when you could be at the beach right now drinking pina coladas. That sounds delightful, and I hope you go and do that. And Chris, you tuning in from England where it is now very, very late. I just appreciate your time so much. You've been wonderful.
Oh, I've enjoyed it. Thanks very much for having me.
Absolutely. And everyone who has been here in the chat, I love you guys all so much. You know that. A huge thank you to Anthony for sending through the super chats. I really, really, really appreciate that. Also, try out Bitbacker, where you can send power chats in crypto. And on that note, you guys all have a wonderful weekend. This has been the weekly crypto recap, giving you all of the news from the week, and it happens every Friday. So make sure that you tune into those so you can keep updated with everything going on. And I will see you guys in the Telegram group. If you don't have the link, I will post that in the information below. So I'll see you guys over there, and we'll hang out for a bit more. Thank you guys so much.
Sayonara.
Bye.